Hey everyone, today we're going to be looking at macroeconomic objectives, and our first objective that we're going to look at is the low and stable rate of inflation. Firstly, this is our introduction to macroeconomics, so a few terminology changes that we're going to need to get used to, so we might as well start now. Firstly, demand. We've talked about demand in markets. Now we're talking about aggregate demand. We're going to talk about the demand of everything in society for everyone. We'll get into these terms a bit later, but I want to introduce you to them now. Supply in a market, aggregate supply, so the total supply in an economy. We stop looking at markets, we now look more at an economy as a whole. And instead of looking at price, we look at average price level. Quantity becomes output. So output refers to the whole economy. So essentially everything's just going from small to big. Okay, objectives. So macroeconomic objectives relate to the economy as a whole. So we're not just looking at what's going on in one industry or one market. We're looking at the economy as a whole. Now, governments pursue these objectives when they're managing the economy because it generally results in better outcomes for society when these objectives are achieved. It is tricky. It's not easy to manage an economy, partly because the objectives are interdependent. So if you do something to fix one objective, to achieve one objective, it may mean that it hurts your achievement of another objective. Makes it a bit tricky. Now, our first one, we're going to look at inflation. And inflation refers to a sustained increase in the average price level. It means prices on average are increasing. The way we measure inflation is by the percentage change in the consumer price index. We will get into the CPI in a minute or two. And lastly, we have an inflation target of 2 to 3% per year. Now, what that means is we want prices to go up every year. And that tends to surprise beginning economic students, but it's what we want. We want a low and stable rate of inflation. We want prices to go up. Okay, what is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index? What it does is it compares the price of what we call a basket of goods and services from year to year. So the basket is designed to reflect the consumption habits of an average household. So it'll include things that we buy, things that we can see in this basket here. Laptops, wine, juice, fruit, train tickets, milk, lots of things. Takes into account a huge variety of items. And what's important to note is that the basket is weighted, meaning that the more an item is bought, the greater weight its price change has on the consumer price index. So for example, we buy a huge amount of milk, right? So if the price of milk doubles, that's going to lead to a large effect on the average price level because almost everyone buys milk. Okay, and what's important to note also is that it includes final goods and services, so goods and services that are bought by consumers, right? Consumer price index. And so it also includes things we buy from overseas because we buy lots of things from overseas. So technology, clothes are pretty big ones that we buy from overseas. Okay, we're going to work out the inflation rate for this fictional country called Burmistan in 2022. Now, this isn't something that we really are going to need to do in the course, but I want you to have an understanding of how the CPI, the basket of goods, works, right? So let's say this economy of Burmistan, it has 4 goods. We're going to simplify it. 4 goods: beef, baseballs, bracelets, bicycles. B for Burmistan, B for this stuff. So firstly, we're going to look at what we've got, the amount in the basket, so the weight of each of these. We buy lots of baseballs, so we weight those more. We don't buy as much beef. We hardly buy any bicycles, buy a fair few bracelets. Each has their price. So we look at the total value of the basket in 2021. So if you bought this is average, let's say average household consumption, $510, right? It should make sense. Now, these same things, we'll buy the same things the next year, but the prices are likely to be a little bit different. So price of beef has gone down, $15, $14. Price of baseballs has gone up, bracelets, more expensive, bicycles, those two. So we get the value of the basket in 2022. So we buy the same things in 2021 and 2022, but the cost to the consumer is different. So I think you'll know this means that there has been inflation. So we're just doing a percentage change here. So we get the new minus the original, or the change, divided by the original times 100, and we will get 12.53%. That's how much prices increased on average. So we say average price level because, look, some things get cheaper, other things get more expensive. So on average, prices of this basket of goods went up by 12.3%. Okay, now the weights of the CPI reflect what percentage of household income is spent on the goods and services in each group. So price of housing goes up. We spend about 23% of our income on housing. So that's weighted more if the price goes up. So we don't just look up every single price and average the price increase. We care more about the stuff that we buy more of, that we spend more money on. So we care about housing, food, and we care a little less about things like communication because we don't spend as much money on those. Okay, a couple of other terms we've got here. So we've got inflation, which is a sustained increase in the price level. Now we also have deflation, right? Refers to a sustained decrease in the average price level. And lastly, we have a term that will confuse people at first, disinflation. People are going to get these two terms mixed up, and that's fine. At first, we will get there. Disinflation refers to the average price level increasing, but at a decreasing rate, right? So slower than before. So here we've got two sets of data, 2017, 2018. Inflation rate 1.7 one year, 1.2 the next. Inflation 1.2, 2017, negative 0.2 the next year. So what I want you to think about is which one represents deflation and which one represents disinflation. And the answer, of course, is that this is disinflation because there is still inflation. Inflation prices are increasing by 1.2% this year. So average price level is increasing, but look, it's at a decreasing rate. And deflation, prices, if we get a negative result here, that means prices are actually falling on average. So that is our deflation. So we've said that our objective is to have low and stable inflation. So that begs the question, why do we want any inflation? Why do we want prices to go up? That sounds a bit weird. So let's look at why. So we know inflation means prices are increasing. Now, if prices are increasing, consumers want to buy before prices rise. So if we think back to microeconomics, expectations of future price is a non-price determinant of demand. So if they think prices are going to rise, they're going to buy more. Right. When consumers buy, so consumers will buy more. When consumers buy, there is more production. We're producing more goods and services, right? That production means we have jobs because we need people to make the things. And more jobs means more income, right? And more income means, again, more production. So this sort of comes back here. More income, consumers buy more production, more jobs. So we want this positive cycle of growth and economic activity because more people in jobs means we're better off. Okay, another reason why we want inflation is because we do not want deflation. Now, this is another thing that sounds a little bit counterintuitive at first, but we do not want prices to go down. And let's have a look at why. Deflation means prices are falling. Yep, we know that. Consumers will, if they see prices falling, they're going to want to wait until prices fall before they buy. So that goes back to our non-price determinants of demand, expectations of future price. So they will wait, they will not buy. So when consumers don't buy or they delay their purchases, what that means is that we're producing fewer goods and services. There is less production. Less production means fewer jobs. Fewer jobs means less income. So again, it becomes what we call a deflationary spiral. Less income for people means less consumption, which means less production, which means fewer jobs, which means less income. So it's a spiral. So I sort of do it like this. You can see if we get deflation, the world sort of spirals, the economy sort of spirals badly, takes all the air out of the economy, and it's sort of like the economy is going down the drain. So a deflationary spiral there. And lastly, we want stable inflation. So stable inflation is predictable. We want predictable in an economy. So predictable prices. Firms can plan their future with confidence. That's a good thing. So because when firms have confidence, they will invest, right? They will say, all right, we have a fair idea what prices will be like in 1, 2, 3 years. So we can know what our revenue will be. So therefore we will go out and we will buy this warehouse. We will build this new office, right? They invest. That's a good thing. More investment in capital is more jobs, right? More jobs means more income, and more incomes again mean more production, more jobs, etc. So it's a good thing. Okay, quickly, we're going to look at some of the consequences of inflation. So what happens to our purchasing power? So let's say Larry has $60 to spend on shirts. That's his income, his nominal income. We'll get to that term later. When shirts cost $20, he can buy 3 shirts. All right, good. That's his purchasing power. When inflation hits and suddenly shirts cost $30, he can only buy 2 shirts. Right? So inflation has reduced the purchasing power of his income. So that's a consequence of inflation. His income hasn't changed, but his purchasing power has. So his real income has reduced because effectively he can buy less than he could before. So effectively his income has reduced. Related to this, when a pay increase is actually less than the inflation rate, so let's say inflation is 5%, pay increase of 2%, that's not really an increase in their wage. It's actually a fall in the person's real wage because they cannot purchase what they could before. So their living standards have actually fallen. This is what's happened quite a bit in Australia in the last couple of years because we've had pretty high inflation, but a lot of wage increases have not kept up. So that means their living standards have fallen because their income does not buy as much as it used to. So that's what we call a fall in real wages. Okay, that will do us for low and stable inflation. So we will go through some exercises in class. Thank you.